Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Cindie Chavez here on this Wednesday, November the 7th, 2018. It is 8 a.m. New York time. That's 5 a.m. Los Angeles time and 1 p.m. London time. And we are, in addition to recording the podcast, we are, of course, live streaming to the Law of Attraction Change My Life group on Facebook. So anyone who's tuning in on Facebook, we welcome you too. And a lot of Americans are waking up with political hangovers this morning, Cindie. So we're going to try to see if we can get them into a better frame of mind after the hangovers.
Well, I don't have one. I went to bed.
Good for you. That was a smart thing to do.
I said, I'm going to go to bed, and all of this stuff will still be here in the morning, and nothing is going to change by me staying up and staring at the returns as they slowly drip in. I'm just going to go to bed. So I went to bed.
Good move. Very good move. I love it. Yeah. No, there's a time for every season, right? And this season is the time of relaxing and waking up and saying, oh, okay, it's a new day. We're fine now.
Yeah, the sun is, the sun is just coming up here. So I'm a little earlier than you, so the sun is just coming up. But yes, the sun will rise again.
It does,
hopefully.
and it is rising again. And to be perfectly honest, here in Connecticut, it's a gorgeous day. I'm looking out on blue sky and just clear weather, and I can hardly wait to get outside today because it's going to be beautiful out there. So, yeah. There's both the metaphorical sun and there's the real sun. And for here in Connecticut, both of them are happening, so that's a good thing.
Right. Here too. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a lovely day, and I don't think the midterm elections were. I recognize there's some disappointment, of course, as any election, because somebody's going to be disappointed by some outcome, right?
Oh yes.
I don't think it was as big of a shock as 2016. I think we had a good idea going into it what we were going to see, and so not too much of a shock for so many.
I think there's actually some health that comes out of it too. I mean, it's always hard to point at politics and find out what's the good stuff that's going on, but I think the healthy thing that's going on is now that there is a Democratic Congress with a Republican president, there's a check on each other, and
yes, that's the thing. People always talk about gridlock, and I'm like, no, we want these things to move slowly.
Yeah, absolutely.
We want them to move slowly. When they move too fast, there's sometimes no stopping the train. So we need that check. That check's important. No, I'm with you on that. I'm with you. Yeah. So hey, it's all good.
It is.
We've been talking about using our sleep as a tool, so maybe that's the best thing anybody could have done. Just go to bed last night. Go to bed.
It's funny too because you and I were talking before the show about how I'm thinking about perhaps doing a podcast on politics more specifically than what I did about a month ago, and it's one I have mixed feelings about. On the one hand, I really don't want to focus on politics at all. On the other hand, I know that a lot of people have a strong interest in what's going on politically, and my motivation would be to try to reorient people toward thinking about what they want rather than what they don't want. So I'm kind of going back and forth about that one. So I think I'm with you for the moment. I'm just going to just put that aside and say to heck with that. Let's go on with what we're talking about.
Well, people get real. We talked about this yesterday about the taboo subjects, don't talk about politics and don't talk about religion and don't talk about,
absolutely, yeah.
taboo. But, for me, I always just think taking action politically, I mean, we all take action all day long.
Absolutely.
We go to the grocery store, we pay our bills, we make our bed, we cook food for ourselves, we decide certain things. That's just taking action. That's just arranging things in our lives. And so I don't see it as any different. It's just taking action to create a better world. And boy, when we can take that action and also be in alignment, that's got to be powerful.
It is.
So,
and I add to that,
focusing on what we want.
I add to that the fact that we live in a world of contrast, and we have chosen to come to a world of contrast. There really isn't any better. There's no better example of contrast than the political world. I mean, talk about contrast. You're talking about full contrast.
Right. Yeah. So,
lots of opportunity.
See what amazing creators we are right from the beginning. We chose to come into a world of contrast, and look what we made. We are powerful beings.
We certainly are. So, so we can continue that conversation with what we're talking about with Neville Goddard, because we are exploring chapter 2 of his book, Feeling is the Secret. And yesterday I noticed, I think you noticed it too, we often get like halfway through a chapter, and in this case, the chapter is like, one half the length of a normal chapter, and we're only 1/3 of the way through it. So either that means that we're becoming more particular about the details, or this is more dense than the other books. I haven't figured out which.
Well, I don't know if it's that altogether. I know yesterday we also answered a really powerful question from a listener, Karen,
yes.
And we spent a lot of time there, but I thought it was important, and I love it. If you have questions for us, please throw them out there.
And Karen's question was a great question. I mean, that's a question that a lot of people have that they don't feel comfortable asking. But she asked a really tough question about what for many people is a tough subject. You want to attract the money into your life, and you need it soon, and how are you going to get it there? That's a big question for a lot of people. So thank you, Karen, for bringing
that's
that
another
up.
one of those topics, right? We've got a whole list of them: politics, religion, money, sex.
That's right.
What can we talk about without causing a wave here? So we talked about that, and again, please send us if you have questions about your own personal situation and you'd like to have some advice on, or some brainstorming. Just what would we do? What ideas come up about using the law of attraction in your favor, for your benefit, to help you solve some kind of puzzle or problem? We'd love to hear those questions, whether you post them in the Facebook group if we're streaming there, or email them to us, or however you get them to us. We'd love to hear them.
Absolutely true. And before we get any further, I also want to remind people, you don't want to just send us the questions. You want to be listening so that you know when we're answering the questions. So become a subscriber if you're not yet a subscriber. Otherwise, you may not hear the answer if you're not subscribed. But no, seriously, in all seriousness, we want you to become subscribers. We want everyone. We want thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people to become subscribers. Yes. Because we are on a mission to spread Daily Dose of Happy to as many people as we can around the world. And you are currently listening, and if you're not yet a subscriber, then, now guess what? It's your turn. And fortunately, it's free. Doesn't cost you anything. Really easy to do. Most people these days know how to do it, but if you don't know, if you aren't really sure, we've set up easy links for you at loatoday.net's homepage. So just go to loatoday.net, and you'll be able to find links there. Also, if you're listening on the Facebook group, we have links in the description for this particular podcast post. So you can just go to the description, open up the More button, and you'll see links there for subscribing there as well. So please do become a subscriber. And then also for new subscribers and existing subscribers, please keep sharing the word on social media, your favorite social media channels, that you're listening to loatoday.net. And please do it every time that you're listening, because when you do that, you not only invoke the power of social media, you also invoke the power of the law of attraction to help more and more people come in and become part of our listener audience. So thank you for those of you who are doing it, and thank you for those of you who are about to do it.
Yes, thank you in advance, and thank you to all of those listeners who are giving us a shout out there. It's been effective.
Oh, yeah, it really has been. It's been great. So. And
I always think it's an object lesson, too, that Walt, that you ask for this, because it's just an example that we need to ask for the things that we want.
Yeah, absolutely.
So many times we don't, right? So many times we don't. We meditate about it. We pray about it. We put it in our journal. We write it on our sheet of goals. And does anyone else know? Well, no, I haven't really mentioned it to anyone. It's like, well, mention it.
Cindie, I've been doing this podcast for over 6 years now. For the first 4 years, I didn't mention it to anyone. I just didn't even say anything. If you found me, then you were great, But did I go out of my way to say, hey, let people know about this? No, I didn't do that except for the last couple of years. The last couple of years is when I started doing it. And guess what? Our listenership started taking off. Like, oh, duh. Well, right? Sometimes we're a little slow to learn the lessons.
Oh, I'm telling you, what's crazy is when somebody that I'm coaching that's like 25 and has already, learned all these deep life lessons and says to me, well, I feel like a slow learner. I'm like, don't say that to me.
Yeah, I hear you.
I was talking to a really lovely person, and And I actually think they were 24, and they said that they had been in this terrible relationship and that they were now not in it anymore, and they were healing from some of the things that happened. And they said, I can't believe I'm such a slow learner. It took me 2 years to get out of that bad relationship. And I said, How old are you? 24. I said, I was in a terrible relationship for almost as long as you've been alive, so please don't tell me that you're sad you're a slow learner. Like, you're on hyperspeed. You're doing great.
It's all relative to your experience. It's all relative.
It's all good. It really
It is all good, yeah.
So I want to tell you something interesting. Now, let's see if I can find it. Because we've been talking about Neville, and this chapter has been about sleep.
Right.
And if you've been listening to some of our podcasts prior to that where we were talking about this, one of the reasons why we decided to read this particular book, we were talking about sleeping and dreaming, and I had mentioned that I was going back to get back into my practice of lucid dreaming. Because there was something that Neville described that we both said right away, oh, that sounds like a lucid dream, what he's talking about.
Right.
And so I thought, I haven't been having a practice of lucid dreaming for a while because for me anyway, it's something I have to actually practice. It's not something that just happens. And so I decided to get back into that practice and use it as a tool for conscious creation. So I picked up this book, and it's called Mindful Dreaming by Claire Johnson. Okay. And I picked it up and I started reading it. Listen to this, what I read last night.
Okay.
It's talking about a meditation for lucid dreaming. And here's the line that I've highlighted. It says, as you set this intention, feel gratitude as if your wish has already been granted.
Ooh.
The gratitude makes you smile inside. Let the smile expand right up to the moment that you open your eyes, and keep this lucid inner smile with you as you go about your day and your life. And one of the things I had just written to my email list was about an inner smile that happens when you're imagining that you've already accomplished your goal. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what? Did this person read my note? Anyway, first. But I thought that was really interesting. As you set this intention, feel gratitude as if your wish has already been granted.
Yeah.
That's a nice confirmation of Neville, because Neville has assumed the feeling of the wish fulfilled over and over and over. And now I'm getting it in other books. It's just popping out at me.
What was the name of that book again? Who's the author?
The author is Claire Johnson. Claire R. Johnson.
Okay.
And the book is called Mindful Dreaming.
Mindful Dreaming. Okay. That's cool.
And yeah, there are also quite a bit of good information just on her website. So,
okay.
There's so many resources everywhere for us, right? As conscious creators,
especially these days. I mean, we live in the age of the internet. All this information at our fingers. I mean, it's just it's
amazing.
Really, it's fabulous.
Thank you, Google. Okay,
yes.
Let's see.
And everybody else who provides it too.
So are you ready to dive in and see if we can finish up the second chapter today?
Or at least get through the second third, maybe.
So where we left off yesterday is we were talking about the last couple of lines we read were that you must be in the consciousness of being or having that which you want to be or to have before dropping off to sleep. So that's, meditating or focusing on the feeling of the wish fulfilled as you're dropping off to sleep. Mm-hmm. Once asleep, man has no freedom of choice. His entire slumber is dominated by his last waking concept of self.
Right, yes. That's
I would say that an interesting aside here, though, is that if you are practiced at lucid dreaming, you do have some freedom of choice because you're conscious while you're dreaming. In a lucid dream, your body is asleep, but your mind is conscious. And so you can sometimes make some choices in there.
That's what makes this whole concept of lucid dreaming so interesting, because the premise is you can influence your dream. That's what makes it lucid, isn't it? As opposed to a dream that is vivid but not something that you feel like you have control over.
Correct. And when you master it, there are many studies that have shown that people that master lucid dreaming in their lucid dreams, there have been, tests and experiments where they have used their lucid dreams to practice something, whether it's music or sports or something that they're trying to master, and that there have been extreme improvements shown with the ones that were lucid dreaming and practicing whatever it was in their dreams. Mm-hmm. I thought that was really, really cool, because
cool.
It's like if a third of your life is spent sleeping, like we were talking about yesterday, then wow, that's a lot of extra time that you can be conscious about creating.
Of course,
so that's why I want to use it.
Well, yeah, I think it's a good idea. Abraham would, of course, say, don't do lucid dreaming, do lucid waking. But I like your idea better, because I like to have the sleep. I think the sleep is useful.
Right, exactly. All right, so Neville says, it follows, therefore, that he should always assume the feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction before he retires in sleep. He quotes a psalm here, "Come before me with singing and thanksgiving, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise." I thought that was an interesting verse to throw in there.
Yeah.
But I guess he's just showing that I like the words he uses, accomplishment and satisfaction. Mm-hmm. Those are the feelings we want to tap into right as we're falling asleep. He says your mood prior to sleep defines your state of consciousness as you enter into the presence of your everlasting lover, the subconscious. Mm-hmm. And once again, he's using this metaphor of the subconscious being in love with us and loving us. He says the subconscious is female, and you see in the next paragraph that he says he's speaking of the subconscious. She sees you exactly as you feel yourself to be. Mm-hmm. And once again, there we are with that story that we tell. The story that we're constantly telling, our own story about ourselves, our I am story, that our subconscious just sees that story as true.
Yeah.
And doesn't make a judgment, right? She sees you exactly as you feel yourself to be. If, as you prepare for sleep, you assume and maintain the consciousness of success by feeling, I am successful, you must be successful. Lie flat on your back with your head on a level with your body. Feel as you would were you in possession of your wish, and quietly relax into unconsciousness.
I just found out from reading what you just read there, I just found out that I was doing it the way Neville had in mind without realizing it. Because whenever I wake up in the middle of the night, we talked about this before, I wake up in the middle of the night, or you do, and we realize, okay, well, I'm awake. What am I going to do with it? Well, why don't I try to do some, create some affirmations or start focusing on what I want, assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, whatever. Well, when I start doing that, I literally take the pillows away, lie on my back, and do exactly what he's talking about. I do it recumbent on my back. And I'm thinking, that's pretty cool. I did exactly what he had in mind, and I didn't know I was supposed to do it on my back.
That's funny, because I naturally sleep on my back. Like, that's how I like to sleep. But some people are completely different and opposed to falling asleep on their back and want to fall asleep curled up or on their side or on their stomach. So I guess it matters.
Yeah, I'm a left side person, so yeah.
So I guess it matters. And it makes sense that it might matter, because I think about meditation postures. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can make a difference.
Well, it makes a difference to my wife, too, because I'm more prone to snore when I'm on my back than when I'm on my side. So it makes a big difference to her.
So is she nudging you to roll onto your side?
Well, actually, she'll tell me to put the nasal strips on, so she can go back to sleep.
Well, here's the thing. If you're meditating, maybe it will affect that.
Actually, I think it does. I mean, It's a funny joke, what you're saying there, but I was using nasal strips for quite some time because it was keeping her awake. And after using them for, I don't know, a couple months or so, I ran out at one point, and I just hadn't gotten a replacement supply, and didn't get around to getting a replacement supply for about a week, 10 days, something like that. And then after that week to 10 day period, I asked Louise, am I keeping you awake? She says, no, you haven't kept me awake at all. So I'm thinking that somehow, because I was taking advantage during that time of doing what we're talking about here, doing the meditation in the middle of the night when I woke up and I wanted to go back to sleep, and I figured, well, I'm awake, I might as well, take advantage of it. I was doing a lot of that during that same period of time. I'm wondering, maybe I had been kind of training myself to, among other things, breathe more clearly when I'm lying on my back.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and also because, I mean, we did that live meditation last week. That deep relaxation. We had somebody in the group even say, "Oh my goodness, I don't think I fell asleep."
Yeah, right.
But suddenly it's over, and I'm not sure I remember most of it.
Right.
That's that deep relaxation, and that affects all the muscles in your body. It has to affect, things like snoring. So
and deep breathing
really
is key to meditation.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to do it in order to get into the right meditative state. Well, in order to deep breathe, your nostrils have to be open. That's part of the problem. Everything closes up, so you start to snore. I mean, it just makes sense to me.
Meditation, I'm telling you, it's got a lot of benefits. We didn't talk about this one, but here we go.
That's like, oh, wow.
So Neville goes on to say, he quotes the Psalms. I think this is interesting. He says, "He that keepeth Israel shall never slumber nor sleep," Psalm 121. "Nevertheless, he giveth his beloved sleep," Psalm 127. Now remember, Neville's always using the metaphor of God, and that God, who this psalm could be referring to, is our imagination, our creative power, the power of our imagination.
Yeah, so I'm getting my decoder ring on to try to find out what exactly is he saying here. What's the metaphor?
Right. So the metaphor is with the next line: the subconscious never sleeps. Sleep is the door through which the conscious, waking mind passes to be creatively joined to the subconscious. Sleep conceals the creative act, while the objective world reveals it. That's really powerful. So we were talking before that Neville is saying here that our subconscious is actually the thing, if you will, that is doing the actual creating. That we plant the seeds in our subconscious in different ways, but our story is a big one. And then that it's actually our subconscious that's out picturing these things in 3D reality, manifesting them in our experience.
I'm looking at that quote. "He that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep." Why Israel? And it sounds like keeping Israel, using the decoder ring, suggests the subconscious mind. That's almost like it's a translation for subconscious mind. Because if you put in subconscious mind, he that keepeth the subconscious mind shall neither slumber nor sleep, because the subconscious never sleeps.
Right, and then the next line: "Nevertheless, he giveth his beloved sleep."
And the beloved was also
he's talking about the subconscious being our lover.
Right.
So it's like our conscious mind is able to sleep, but our subconscious is still working.
So the Neville decoder ring tells me that keeping Israel and the beloved are the same thing.
Yeah.
Boy, am I glad to have my Neville decoder ring. Otherwise, I'd be in trouble.
But remember, if we back up a little bit, and I don't have it marked, but he talked about that. I think it was the end of the first chapter. He talked about that the subconscious and the conscious are one. Mm-hmm. They're actually one thing. And yet we divide them when we talk about them,
right,
so we can understand them.
Right.
And the one that he talks about, he says that they're joined together, right? The sleep is the door which the conscious waking mind passes to be creatively joined to the subconscious. Mm-hmm. And of course, he's using a metaphor here also of male and female and of birth. Mm-hmm. Joined together to create something.
Right.
So he goes on to say that our sleep conceals the creative act, because we're asleep. Our conscious mind is asleep. We're not noticing it while our subconscious works away creating something. But the objective world, the things we see when we wake up, reveal it to us. Mm-hmm. So it's the same idea that we talked about yesterday, right? It's like, you want to know what you're believing, the stories you're telling about yourself, just look around.
Yeah, that's
Look
true.
around.
And in this case, he extends it to you want to know what you're believing. It's also you want to know what you're dreaming about. Look at what's going
Well,
on
and
around you.
yeah, and this next sentence, in sleep, man impresses the subconscious with his conception of himself. I think that's the story that we're telling, but that's
Yep.
also the vignette that we're consciously creating.
Yes.
Right? That's when we decide, okay, I've been on autopilot telling this story, and I've been saying things like, I'm broke and I'm lonely and I'm sick and whatever other stories we tell.
Yep.
And oh my goodness, I want to change that. I'm going to use my imagination to impress my subconscious so that it will create a different conception of myself. And so that we create a vignette that says, I'm abundant and I'm vibrantly healthy and I'm, happy. And that way, when we create that, we impress it. We impress the subconscious as we're drifting to sleep, and the subconscious works creating it.
That word impress also occurs to me to have two definitions, both of which apply. Because the first one that comes to my mind is the one that I think he was immediately using was to impress is to make an impression. And by impression, I mean to, like, you push your hand into a mattress and it makes an impression on the mattress. It leaves a shape of your hand or something like that.
Right. I was thinking of like molding clay.
Molding clay, right.
Yeah.
But there's also the other kind of impressing, like impressing somebody else.
Oh, like that's impressive.
Yeah. and you know what? That also applies. Man impresses his subconscious with a conception of himself. Well, yeah, that's what he's doing, isn't he?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I like that. So Neville goes on to say, what more beautiful description of this romance of the conscious and subconscious is there than told in the Song of Solomon? And he quotes from the Song of Solomon, by night on my bed, I sought him whom my soul loveth. I found him whom my soul loveth. I held him and not let him go until I had brought him into my mother's house and into the chamber of her that conceived me.
Boy, that's where you really are grateful for the decoder ring. Otherwise, I'm saying, what the heck is he talking about?
Well, I don't think there's a whole lot to decode, just that he's speaking of love. And he is saying that our subconscious and our conscious have a love relationship with each other.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting is that the picture that he paints really is that our subconscious loves us with an unconditional love. Right?
Which is true. It makes total sense.
Okay, your word is my command.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever story you're telling, that's what I'm going to make.
I think part of it is just me getting used to the idea of using an erotic relationship as a basis for understanding the difference or the relationship between the conscious and the subconscious mind. There's a part of me that's saying, okay, yeah, really?
Well, that's something that's going to be pretty common all in lots of different systems of magic, and I really see such a connection between the law of attraction and different magical practices, and like even in other religions, like the practice of Tantra really has to do with meditation, mm-hmm. and yet in America we always hear it connected to sexual things.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But actually, the practice of Tantra is meditation, mm-hmm. and a very beautiful practice of consciously creating things, mm-hmm. Even just very deep teachings. And so I think that's always going to be in there somewhere. It's like what I was talking about yesterday with today. Today is the new moon. Happy new moon. And it's the new moon in Scorpio, and Scorpio rules the 8th house in astrology, and that's the house of hidden things, the invisible realm, mm-hmm. things that are taboo, and a lot of astrologers will say it's the house of sex, death, and taxes, because those are things we don't want to talk about. And so it makes sense,
Well, it's appropriate the day after the political election, something else not to talk about, right?
Well, in the ancient world, these things were considered sacred, and in our modern world, often they're considered taboo. So, I see that connection there. He's talking about creation in the same way that two lovers would create a child.
But
And
it's a
so,
very strong metaphor for him because this is not the first place that he introduces this. This is like entwined throughout a lot of his narrative. That's why
correct.
I'm just struck by that fact. I'm struck by the fact that for him, it's a really big deal to use that metaphor. Really big deal.
So where do we stop here? By night, on your bed. Okay, so that's the quote.
Right.
Preparing to sleep, you feel yourself into the state of the answered wish, and then relax into unconsciousness. You realized wish is he whom you seek. By night. So he's explaining his metaphor, right?
Mm-hmm.
By night on my bed I sought whom my soul loveth. He says your realized wish is he whom you seek. By night on your bed, you seek the feeling of the wish fulfilled, that you may take it with you into the chamber of her that conceived you, into sleep, or the subconscious, which gave you form, that this wish may also be given expression. So he just explained his own metaphor there.
I just realized there's another piece of this metaphor that helps me understand why he's so wrapped up in it. Because like I said, this is a big metaphor for him. He keeps repeating it and restating it in a number of different ways. One of the words that we use to associate with sex and with love and so forth, erotic love, is intimacy. And there is a very intimate connection between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And he's stating it's even beyond that. There's a very intimate connection between what goes on in the subconscious mind and what we see with our conscious minds in our waking states. And now that metaphor starts to make more sense to me when I understand it that way. Because now, okay, yes, there is an intimate relationship. In fact, our private thoughts are so private that we call them private. We often say, "Don't intrude on my private thoughts," So there is an
that's
intimacy
really good.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's starting to make more sense to me when I look at it through intimacy.
Yeah, I'm so glad you caught that because that does make a lot of sense, and that's so true. That's funny because that keeps coming up, the idea of things that we don't talk about, right?
Yeah, right.
private things. And
right.
A lot of times, you brought it up at the beginning of the podcast today. You were talking about when we mentioned Karen's great question, and you said, that's a question that's so important, and a lot of people don't want to ask it because they don't want to talk about it, right? So all of these things, they are definitely very private, personal. Sometimes we don't want to talk about them. We don't want to shine any light there.
Exactly.
And yet the subconscious is just, the subconscious does not judge. And I think it's really useful to think about that metaphor, that when we impress the subconscious, it's not like the subconscious is creating these uncomfortable things in our life because it hates us, right?
Right. True.
It's because it loves us, and it just takes whatever we're giving it and says, okay, all right. And when we shine a light on those areas, when we're willing to step up and ask a question, like Karen's question the other day, that was very personal, and you're right, a lot of people would say, I'm not going to ask that question. Like when you go to an Abraham thing and people are in, what do they call it? The hot seat, right?
Right.
Oh no, I'm in the hot seat. But when we're willing to shine the light on those things and go ahead and say them, then we can open up to a shift. And so what's so cool here is that this is just about us really saying them to ourselves, us getting real with ourselves about the way things are and the way we want them to be, the things we want, creating that vignette of, venturing into that area where we actually are feeling the fulfillment of the wish fulfilled and letting that impress the subconscious. I think it's really powerful.
Another thought occurred to me about intimacy and the intimacy of thought, and that is when we're talking about this relationship between our conscious minds and our subconscious minds, we are also, and I think this is part of what Neville is implying, we are also wanting to do so gently. I mean, a good intimate relationship is a gentle relationship.
Yes, very
it's
nice.
A loving relationship.
Right.
We want to be loving toward ourselves when we do this. I think he's saying, among other things, don't be hard on yourself while you're doing this. This is a very gentle, loving, easy process. This is not a harsh process at all.
Even in the next sentence, the way he says this is so true with what you just said. Listen, this is the way to discover and conduct your wishes into the subconscious. Feel yourself in the state of the realized wish and quietly drop off to sleep.
Yeah,
It is very gentle.
It is.
And nothing to be afraid of, right? So it's a wonderful idea that there's so much intimacy and that we can feel the wish fulfilled as we're falling to sleep. Mm-hmm. What a wonderful process.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not hard at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Night after night, you should assume the feeling of being, having, and witnessing that which you seek to be, possess, and see manifested. Never go to sleep feeling discouraged or dissatisfied. Never sleep in the consciousness of failure.
Both of those are treating ourselves roughly.
Yeah.
Right?
And I remember the first time that I read just the idea of, not having any free choice after we go to sleep. And in other words, not talking about lucid dreams, but from Neville, the first time I ever read that we are setting the stage, so to speak, for our subconscious to be creating all night by those thoughts we have as we slide into sleep. I remember my shock at oh my goodness, because that was the first thing that came to my mind is, what about people that say, I was so worried that I had trouble getting to sleep and I was tossing and turning because I'm worried about this or that. And I thought, oh my goodness, what are we doing to ourselves when we fall asleep? Just like he just said, when we fall asleep feeling discouraged.
Feeling worried, yeah. Worry is
or dissatisfied.
That's not going to be a good night's sleep no matter how you look at it. I don't care if you look at it through the law of attraction or not. Just look at it in terms of how sleep goes. If you go to sleep worried, you're not going to feel good. You're going to toss and turn. You're going to sleep poorly. You're just not going to get a good night's sleep because you're going to bed worried.
Well, in my mind, I kept thinking that, and you're right about that. And I would think, however, one missed night of sleep is nothing compared to recognizing that by doing that, by worrying your way into sleep, that you've just planted a whole bunch of seeds in your subconscious that are going to keep creating more things for you to worry about. It's like, oh.
Talk about worrying. Wow.
Never sleep in the consciousness of failure.
Yeah.
There's that saying that we've all probably heard, but people will say, of a married couple, don't go to bed upset with each other.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Never go to sleep angry. Right. Here's why.
Yes.
Here's one reason why.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Your subconscious, whose natural state is sleep, sees you as you believe yourself to be. And whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, the subconscious will faithfully embody your belief.
Now that's interesting. Because if I look at that from the perspective of the way Abraham expresses things, that's very much the way that Abraham describes the inner being. Right? Because the inner being is one who always sees you to be good and doesn't believe in you in being anything else other than in a good situation and your life working out the way you want it to. Well, he describes subconscious mind as being very much the same kind of viewpoint.
Well, the thing I see that may be different, though, is that I believe Abraham talks about I always say, my higher, wiser self, right? Our inner being, that our inner being always sees us in, what's the state I'm thinking of? In our fulfilled state, right? At our highest joy, doing, with vibrant health, with feeling good, with being successful in our goals, with fulfilling our potential. That's the word I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And Neville says here that our subconscious sees us as we believe ourselves to be, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent.
Okay, yeah, there is a difference there. You're right.
So I see that a little bit.
Although I'm not so sure that it's that big of a difference. I think that one is perhaps a little bit less of a value judgment than the other one is. But if I'm the inner being, I am looking at you as you believe yourself to be too, but I'm reacting to it. I'm responding to it from where I am coming from, because the inner being is also alive, right? The inner being is who we are in the non-physical world. Well, just because I might disagree with you, emotionally speaking, doesn't mean that I don't see you the way you are. So I think
Yeah,
you're right. There is.
I do see the connection in that our inner being, all regardless of what we're actually being and doing and having and experiencing, our inner being looks at us and sees us as the perfection that we could be. Mm-hmm. Our inner being looks and sees the potential.
And it also accepts us for who we are. Just okay.
Exactly, and that's the part that I see. Exactly. Yeah. And our subconscious is doing the same thing. It loves us regardless of the story we're telling. Mm-hmm. It loves us regardless of who we believe ourselves to be.
Exactly, yeah.
Now, Neville is saying that the subconscious is the thing that is doing the creating, and that the subconscious will faithfully embody our belief, whatever that is, good, bad, or indifferent. Mm-hmm. Faithfully create it. As you feel, so do you impress her, and she, the perfect lover, gives form to these impressions and outpictures them as the children of her beloved.
Wow.
Thou art all fair, my love. There is no spot in thee. From the Song of Solomon. And that's interesting because that's exactly what we're just both saying, right? Is that exactly. Our inner being sees us as wonderful and perfect. Mm-hmm. Our subconscious says, I don't see any spot in you. I just create this exactly the way you're giving it to me. Mm-hmm. That's why this is on us. This is on us.
We do it to ourselves so many times.
Yeah. Thou art all fair, my love. There is no spot in thee is the attitude of mind to adopt before dropping off to sleep. Disregard appearances and feel things that are as you wish them to be. For he calleth things that are not seen as though they were, and the unseen becomes seen.
I like that. Disregard appearances and feel that things are as you wish them to be. I like that. Because that's the basic deliberate creator message, right? I'm not, if I don't like the way a certain thing is or the way things are in my life, I can choose to disregard them and start visualizing the way I want them to be so that they can become that. It's powerful.
Right. I think that this is the whole idea that we have to train ourselves. Yes. We have to practice to be able to believe something that we're actually not really seeing with our eyes yet. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
That's not, that doesn't happen easily. Usually we need to practice. We need to stay with it. Mm-hmm. Right. And Neville talks about that. He talks about doing this over and over.
Yeah.
I mean, nowhere in here do we see, look, if you do this one time as you fall asleep, everything will be different when you wake up. It might be, but I think it's going to take some practice.
Well, he talks about how when you do it over and over, you harden it. You harden the reality.
I love that phrase that he uses where he says that the stronger we feel it, the more often that we do this, that those things that we are creating in our imagination begin to harden into fact.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I like it.
So
it's a good reminder about how quantum physics works, actually.
Go ahead. Say that again.
I said it's a good reminder of how quantum physics works.
Yes.
Because quantum physics teaches us that it's what we focus on that reality responds to and becomes. The idea of the superposition. You have something that's in multiple places at one time until you actually take a look at where it is, and now it's resolved to wherever you thought it was going to be. It's just that is the scientific exemplification of what you focus on is what it becomes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So disregard appearances and feel that things are as you wish them to be. To assume the feeling of satisfaction is to call conditions into being which will mirror satisfaction. Mm. And then he says, signs follow, they do not precede.
That's a great message. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, me too. Proof that you are will follow the consciousness that you are. It will not precede it.
That's a great response to anyone who asks, what does this sign mean? Because anyone who's asking that is trying to figure out what's coming. Mm-hmm. I mean, yes, in one sense, they're responding to what's already happened. But really, the whole reason they're concerned about it is not because it happened. They already know it happened. They're concerned about what's coming. They're concerned about what it's pointing to. And he's saying, no, that's the wrong way around.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think about Florence Scovel Shinn and her concept of driftwood, right? Mm-hmm. Where she talks about when the ship starts getting close to land, the sailors will notice driftwood, mm-hmm. right? And birds, things that you don't notice when you're all the way out in the middle of the ocean where you can't even see where the land is. Once you start to get closer to land, you start seeing signs.
Exactly.
And those signs are many people call driftwood, in the LOA community. We talk about driftwood because we're looking at it as a sign of this thing that's coming.
Right.
Right? It's like, yes, it's on its way to me. I'm starting to see driftwood.
Yes.
But in reality, the sign of driftwood is actually following what you've already been doing in consciousness.
Exactly.
So it's kind of both, right? It might be preceding a bigger manifestation, but it's definitely following your consciousness. It's mm-hmm. following your your imagination or the methods that whatever you've tapped into. It's the feeling that it's following.
Which I think is actually, that's a much more valuable thing. I mean, people want it to be a sign of what's coming, but I think it's much more valuable to look at in terms of what's come by, because like you said, it's an indication of what you've been focusing on and what you've been thinking about. And we need that mm-hmm. reminder. We need to be reminded of, oh yeah, this is what I've been focusing on. No wonder. Of course, that's why I'm seeing this driftwood.
Yep. Proof that you are will follow the consciousness that you are.
That's right. Yeah.
It will not precede it. You are an eternal dreamer, dreaming non-eternal dreams. Your dreams take form.
What a phrase. Wow.
Your dreams take form as you assume the feeling of their reality. Mm. Do not limit yourself to the past. What do you think that Neville is meaning when he says do not limit yourself to the past?
I think that ties back to the thing about signs. I honestly think that we humans spend far too much time trying to read the tea leaves and look at the signs and understand what the signs are telling us. And, is there some great big mystic message in there? I think he's saying, don't pay as much attention to that stuff. I mean, great. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's what a sign is. A sign is what you just been thinking about. It's what is manifested. But why are you hung up on that? You're basically holding yourself back when you do that. So he's saying, don't limit yourself to the past. The future is where you're going to. The present is where you're living.
Yeah. He says, knowing that nothing is impossible to consciousness, begin to imagine states beyond the experiences of the past. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whatever the mind of man can imagine, man can realize. All objective, visible states were first subjective, invisible states. Mm. And you called them into visible by assuming the feeling of their reality.
There it is, yeah.
Yeah, you did. You called them into visible, I like that, by assuming the feeling of their reality. The creative process is first imagining and then believing the state imagined. Always imagine and expect the best.
Yeah, good advice.
The world cannot change until you change your conception of it. As within, so without.
I like this section. I want to stop you for a second there. I like this section particularly because it's a reminder to continue to focus on our understanding of how the law of attraction works. And to keep remembering that we attract everything that's in our lives, and we're continuing to do so. It is an ongoing flow. That's the thing that I keep trying to grasp more and more every single day. And I'm getting better at it. Doing a podcast helps. But I'm still trying to grasp that because, I mean, like all of us, we're all so stuck in this idea that the world is fixed. This is the way it is, and I didn't play any role in creating it. And it's a great reminder to yes, I created everything that's here. I played a role in creating all of it. It wouldn't be here if it weren't for my imagination. My imagination is directly impacting all of this. That's a really important thing for me to remember. Really important.
Yeah, I love that sentence, right? All visible states were first invisible states.
Yes, they certainly were.
And you called them into visible by assuming the feeling of their reality.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a simple, but not always easy, but simple process, the creative process, right? First imagining and then believing.
And reminding yourself that you know this to be true. That's my big takeaway. It's constantly reminding myself, yes, this is the way the world works. Yes, this is my role in the world. This is how I interact. This is what this whole place is all about, that we're in this physical place. It's about this process right here. And the more that I can remember that, the better, more successful, more abundant my life is going to be.
Yeah, I love, where Neville says you are an eternal dreamer, dreaming non-eternal dreams.
Yes.
Right? I mean, one of my teachers said, you are the dreamer and you are the dream.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? We are creating it all. Your dreams take form as you assume the feeling of their reality. And that feeling, in order to call them into visible, that feeling has to be something that we cultivate, right? It's not just tapping into that feeling for a few moments.
Right.
It's where we've all experienced at one time or another that idea, right? It's like, well, I've been feeling a certain thing lately, right? I've been having my mind on a certain thing. And it's not just fleeting. It's like sometimes it can be overwhelming, especially sometimes when we're worrying about something.
Isn't it funny too? We use that phrase. I've had my mind on a certain thing. We don't say it that way. We name what the certain thing is. But I've had my mind on a certain thing. You can bet 99 times out of 100 it's something you didn't want. That's why you're talking about it, right? But I have this mind. I have my mind on this certain thing. It's like hanging on.
Maybe. I mean, I say that because as a writer and a creator, there are plenty of times when I have my mind on a certain thing, and it's not something I don't want. It's something I'm building in my mind because I'm going to create something.
Well, that's true.
So in other words, I've had my mind on a certain thing for the past week, and it's something that I'm probably going to put together and publish soon. So, but the point I'm making is that those ideas, those creative ideas, and I'm talking about them in a very practical sense right now, right? Like if has my mind on a certain design for a painting or an article I'm writing or something, often those thoughts are sort of with me all the time over a period of time as I'm planning it. So I'm thinking about the article when I'm cleaning the house. I'm thinking about the article when I'm driving the car. I'm thinking about the article when I'm doing other things. It's sort of constant, this constant flow of thought.
Yeah, I agree.
And eventually that article becomes ink on paper and then gets published somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree completely. That's where I was trying to get to. That's what I was trying to get to. I was trying to get to the idea. We often start from this point of view, I don't like this thing. I don't want this thing, and so I'll keep focusing on it. And yet, over time, as we follow this process that Neville's been describing here of learning to accept and understand how the world really works, learning to understand that we're creating all of it, learning to understand that we are actually powerful creators and that we play this really important role in creating our own abundance in our own lives. As we study that experience of what it is I'm focusing on starts to shift. That's where I was trying to get to. That just what you described it so beautifully, how you can be focusing on something that you really do like, that it's not something you don't want, it's something you do want, and you start creating it in your mind. And now, in that process, you are demonstrating to yourself and to reality, you are the deliberate creator. You're doing it intentionally, you're doing it consciously, and the more that you do that, the more successful you become at it.
Right, and that's the common denominator that I was trying to get to, is that whether it's something we don't want or whether it's something we do want and we're working towards, it's that idea that this thought becomes something that's with us all the time.
Yes.
Instead of just, I spent 3 minutes today assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled.
Yeah, right.
No, it's a thought that starts kind of overtaking us when we get to that part, that's when I believe it starts to harden into reality.
And it's when it's cool. It's when it's fun, because now all of a sudden you start to feel it.
Right.
You start to feel like, I'm getting this thing. I'm getting it.
Yeah.
I'm doing it.
Yes. Exactly. And it is exciting like that. Sometimes that feeling is just like overwhelming to me because I know that it's on its way and I know that it's actually here already. I'm calling it into visible. I really love that.
I just realized too that there's two meanings to the phrase I used. I said, I'm getting this thing, and getting it actually means receiving it. But it also means, in the vernacular, it means understanding it. I'm doing both.
It's like I'm getting it.
I'm receiving it, and I'm understanding. I'm grokking it. Right, exactly.
Right.
Oh my.
So I'm watching the clock because we're coming up on just a few minutes.
Yeah, we got about 4 minutes left, but we'll go as far as we can.
All right, so let's just read a couple more lines here and see what comes up for us. He says, the world cannot change until you change your conception of it. As within, so without. Nations as well as people are only what you believe them to be. No matter what the problem is, no matter where it is, no matter whom it concerns, you have no one to change but yourself. And you have neither opponent nor helper in bringing about the change within yourself. You have nothing to do but convince yourself of the truth of that which you desire to see manifested.
That last sentence, he says, you have nothing to do but convince yourself of the truth. And I'm realizing, is it really convince myself, or is it allowing myself to believe? Which is it? And is there a difference? Maybe there's not a difference. But in my mind, there seems to be a difference, because I think convincing myself, that's almost where I have to effort it. I have to push myself to do it. Whereas if I just allow myself to believe it, then it's a different experience. But he chooses to say, convince yourself. And that's what makes me interested in that particular sentence. Why convince?
I think we convince ourselves. When we use that word convince, when we say, well, I'm convinced, right? I'm convinced of whatever. It doesn't matter. We're sure. We're convinced. We're certain, right? And I think we convince ourselves by giving ourselves permission, like you said, by allowing ourselves.
Because we could also be talked into it. I'm not sure what that means either, but we could be talked into it. It's almost like we've been out-argued or something.
But, I don't know, if somebody talks us into something, we may still not feel convinced.
True.
Right? We might say, well, they talked me into this, but I don't know.
You do it half-heartedly.
I don't know if I believe it.
Yeah.
At some point, I recognize that I get to choose what I believe. And it was like a big aha moment for me. Yeah. I was like, oh, I can just say, you know what? I just choose to believe this. Easy peasy.
Which is pretty wild when you think about it. You can just choose to believe something. It doesn't have to be something you've talked yourself into. It doesn't have to be something that somebody else convinced you of. You can just choose it.
Yep.
Just randomly choose. Okay, I choose that. Okay, it's all yours. It is wild stuff. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to believe it just because that's what we were taught our whole life. We can just choose to believe it because we want to.
And that means we can change our belief anytime we want to. And that's the real empowering part.
Right. Exactly.
That's it right there. Because once you have the power to change your belief, you got the power to do anything.
That's right. So you have nothing to do. But
why do I have always all these things to do then? No, I'm kidding.
You have nothing to do but convince yourself of the truth of that which you desire to see manifested. That's all of our assignment for today.
There you go. That's good. Well, actually, we have one more assignment. I have an assignment for you. I need you to tell people how to reach Cindie Chavez in case the discussion that's been wonderful here is not quite enough and they need to have a little more personal attention. How do they reach you?
Well, they can find me online at cindiechavez.com, CindieChavez.com. I would love for you to come find me. Come say hello. Give me a shout.
Would be a good thing. All right, Cindie, this has been great. I'm glad that we get to do this again on Wednesday. Wednesday we get to do it twice, so I look forward to continuing Chapter 2 later on this afternoon.
Yeah, I'll be back this afternoon.
Good.
Wonderful.
I will as well. We hope that you'll join us as well later this afternoon and every time here on Elevate Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Come on. There we go.
The broadcast of